Maybe. Oh, there we go.
Good evening, Broncos country. We are live, but before we get started, let's give it a minute for the stream to breathe. Make sure we have all of our platforms included here for tonight's discussion. All right, and it looks like we are good. Welcome in to another installment of the Orange and Blue View. And I know I'm on the opposite side tonight, and you may see another familiar face that's not Dylan, but I am one of the co-hosts here, Ron White, and on that side of me, you have my partner here for tonight, Carl Dumler. Carl, this is our second or third time doing a show together, and it's good to have you back, man. How are you doing on this nice Saturday?
Yeah, no, it's been good. I was telling you right before the show, been doing a lot of traveling. I'll be actually in Denver for a week. For any of you that live out there in Denver and getting to hang out and do some work there in Denver. Thankfully, my job allows me to kind of do a little bit of traveling
On
and
travel,
call it
yeah.
work. But no, it'd be good. I saw this upcoming week supposed to be really nice in Denver. You know, like 70s, 80s, and I'll be outside a lot, so that'll be good. And but no, it's just great to be back on another show with you here, Ron, and getting to see you. And I was just telling somebody the other day about our adventures in Denver last year when we went to the meet and greet and getting to sit down for food. And somebody had asked me, like, well, what do you guys all talk about? I said, Bronco football. Like
The
that's
Broncos.
that's what we talk about. Yes, even in our spare time, we still talk about Bronco football.
Yes, yes. And yeah, of course, that's why we're all here. We have one thing in common, and that's our love for the Denver Broncos. And yep, same here as far as how I'm doing. It's like I was telling you before the show, I'm here now, I think, for the foreseeable future here in my home in Georgia. And it's been hot. But again, I'm so excited to be back with all of you today to talk about the Broncos. And we have a good little topic here for tonight. But before we get into that, let's just see who all we have joining us. We got Daniel Berry Sports Highlights with a yo to you too, sir. How are you doing? Hopefully you are doing well, my friend. Good to see you. Good to see you. And let's see who else we have. Got David Youngkin. Thank you, David. He says, had my surgery this morning. Just wanted to say hi. May not be awake when the show starts. We're going to thank you for coming in. Hopefully, everything with the surgery went well. Sounds like it did. But again, thank you for coming in, my man, with your comment there. We appreciate it.
Yeah, rest up, and glad everything's at least good today.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Yeah.
I think surgery went well. Then that means you're awake and moving and able to the message on here. So definitely get some rest and hopefully see you in future shows as well.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. All right, let's see who else we have. Got Roy Osborne coming in from Facebook. Thank you, Roy. Says, awesome to see you guys, Carl, Ron. It's just Carl and Ron, so no Scott tonight, but we'll give them our regards. And all of Broncos country. Thank you, Roy, for coming in. We appreciate you coming in, my guy, as always. All right, let's see who else we have. So we got Darrell Washington with a question here. Darrell Washington Sr., thank you. Says, who will be the Broncos starting quarterback? That would be, in my opinion, Bo Nix. Bo Nix is going to be the Broncos starting quarterback, Darrell. I mean, Carl, there's been all this hoopla with Zach Wilson. They're saying, yeah, Stidham looked okay there and no teasing in camp, but I think we all know that there's not that much. When we look at what transpired in camp, it doesn't seem as though there's that much separation between Stidham and Nix. And if Stidham were, had a wider gap, then, a lot of people would say Stidham was more than likely your starter. But from what we've heard, from what some people have seen, Nix looks pretty good to go. And I see him week one being the starting quarterback for your Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I'm with you there. If it's close, they're going to give the tie or the even if Stidham does a little bit better in training camp, if Bo Nix is close, they're going to let him start. You've got some teams now are starting to think about running these rookie windows because the quarterback market is just getting out of hand. I mean, even average quarterbacks are getting $45-50 million a year. And when you've got that much eating up the cap, like it used to be, like there'd maybe be 2 quarterbacks that'd be making more than 12% of your cap space. Now it seems like half the league is making more than 12% of your cap space at the quarterback position. So I think you could see some teams going to this more, hey, let's just keep trying every few years, get a rookie and see if they can turn into something, because then we can surround them with a great team. And we've seen, I mean, Russell Wilson, when he was a rookie or on his rookie contract, won a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco, last year of his rookie contract, won a Super Bowl. And so you're seeing, unless you are those elite Hall of Fame quarterbacks, the time that you're going to win a Super Bowl is on that rookie contract. And so I think the Broncos are going to want to get him on the field as quickly as possible. And maybe they give him a couple weeks into the season, but majority of the year is going to be Bo Nix.
Yep, agreed. And you bring up a good point on that rookie window. That portion of it where it's cost control for a team, right? The 4 years, first round pick obviously have the 5th-year option. So you want to try to strike while the iron's hot. And what I mean by that was within that window, hopefully they can, gather as many pieces as they can to try to compete. I think in the Broncos scenario, though, Carl, it's, I say next year is more of the Bo Nix experiment. Just trying to see if he's the guy, see if he pans out. Obviously, if the Broncos make the playoffs, guys, that's even icing on the cake. But, I see this more as seeing what Bo Nix can be, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, just to see if, he's a quality starter for your Broncos. But, I like what they've done in the off season, with the draft, and especially addressing the D-line. Because we know that has been a big concern. We saw issues last year across the board, and it was atrocious. So I like the position that the Broncos are in. Again, I don't think they're quite there yet as far as, playoffs, and for sure not Super Bowl, but I think they're somewhat trending slowly in the right direction. And of course, you got to start that with getting the right guy under center.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's you can't expect a rookie to come in and dominate day one. It does happen every once in a while, but for the majority of rookies, it's a very up and down. You're hoping you can see flashes of what they could be moving forward, and then you just hope they take that next step the next year. And so for this year, I mean, that's going to be the key. You have to figure out, how are you going to judge success on this team? Is it going to be knowing, hey, Bo Nix is our guy moving forward? That I consider that to be a successful season, to finally have your quarterback since Manning retired. I mean, there's that shirt that guy was wearing that had all the names of every starting quarterback for the Broncos, and he's running out of room and he's got it going down his pants now. That just, they've got to end that. That's got to be step number one. I've said that there are 3 things that most teams that are successful have: good ownership, good coach, good quarterback. Those are the teams that can be consistent year in, year out. And so if Bo Nix can be that guy, you've really solved that. Probably means Sean Payton's the guy too, because he's got the most out of that guy. And I think the Walter Pinner group, I think they're proving to be a pretty good ownership group. I mean, we don't know much. It's hard to always judge how they are, but they're willing to put their money into this to have it be successful. Building on new training facility, $100 million training facility. Spending on the field, making sure nutrition is better. And we're seeing this last year, injuries were way down for this team. So I think that's all a sign that ownership is really investing in what is going on the field. So Daryl, good question there. But I really do hope it's going to be Bo Nix.
Right. And speaking of that on the ownership, not just the investment, Carl, but the trust. The trust they have with Sean Payton. They're letting Sean Payton cook, if you will. So they're letting him take the fold and, starting over at quarterback. bringing in the right pieces there in free agency and with the draft. So that faith in Sean Payton, along with that investment, we'll see what happens. But you got to love at least what the ownership is doing, kind of letting both Paytons, I should say, work. Let's see. Got Mike Edo coming in. Thank you, Daryl, again for that question. That was a very good question. Hey, Broncos country. Hello to you too, sir. Hopefully you are doing well, my guy. Thank you for hopping in. And then we got Phil McLaughlin coming in. Thank you, Phil. It's always good to see you, my guy. He says, "Good evening, Carl and Ron. We're going to pay Bolles before the season starts, after, or the end of the season. Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life." Carl, I'm gonna let you take this one on first. Let me see what you're thinking here.
Well, I mean, obviously it depends on what kind of season he has. I don't think they'll pay him before the season. I know they tried to rework his contract with him, and he said no. He's always kind of been that type of guy of, you gave me the contract you gave me, now you honor it or you cut me. He's not one that really wants to rework his contract. That can rub people the wrong way. I would say he's just as likely to be gone after the season as he is to be re-signed to a new contract. I think left tackle could be a really big position the Broncos are looking at moving forward. They might be trying to hope that they can develop somebody this offseason going into next season so that they can replace him, because he is an expensive player and he's getting up there in age, and he's been very inconsistent. I love Garett Bolles, but there's just days where you just can't tell what he's going to be from year to year. And there's going to be games where he looks like he's an all-star, should be all-pro. And like I said, then the next week he holds 2 times and gives up a sack. Then he's been injured some too. So he's such a tough player to judge, because at his peak, he is a top 5 left tackle in football. But he also can be a bottom 10 left tackle in football. So I hate having that from your left tackle starter. You need a little bit more consistency year in, year out. And with him getting up there in age, the contract for left tackles, it's getting up there too. So I don't know. I have a hard time believing he's going to be a Bronco after this season. But like I said, if he has a great year, then it's hard to cut him. So it's kind of up to him at this point.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly in agreement with you, Carl. I guess, yeah, it really depends on how this year goes. But, I look back at, he's been in those trade talks for a while now. And, I don't think that's going to, be gone anytime soon. I still think now, I don't think his trade value is probably that great, but I think he's going to be going. He's probably going to test the market something after the season. I don't see him staying after the season. So I think that's where I agree with you on. But I don't know, Carl. I don't know, because with the Broncos, they haven't drafted a tackle since him. So I think that's where, part of me is like, they need, he's going to be going after the season, but I'm looking at, what the Broncos have done in the past, and it's like, well, they may end up just signing him, depending on how this year goes, obviously, to another deal, and not, because they already know what they have in Bolles. Right now, I'm with you that his play can be up and down. I think you can do a lot worse than Bolles at the tackle position. But, I just think that they may go with what they know and just end up biting the bullet and paying him. But I'm all for, getting younger. If they can draft a left tackle, I think that'll be great for this team. But I just don't know. Again, I'm only going by what the Broncos have done in the past, and they just have not drafted. So I say I want a left tackle to be drafted and Bolles to be gone. But again, just depending on how it has happened over the past few years, I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Right. I guess part of me is, it's not only going to be about Garett Bolles and what he does on the field this year. But it's also going to be, what are some of those backup guys? I know Jody Hushberger says, Frank Crum. People forget Alex Palchevsky last year was looking really good in preseason before he got hurt. And the team made sure that they kept him on the roster so that he couldn't get picked up by another team. So I think maybe they're hoping their coaching staff can do enough to make one of those guys be good enough that they can feel comfortable going into the draft not knowing who their left tackle is. And they're going to know more in the building than we will. I'm sure if none of those guys play and we're going into next offseason and Garett Bolles has been traded, cut, whatever, we're going to be in panic mode and probably going, they have to draft a left tackle. But, like I said, if they feel really comfortable with one of those guys being a starter, then they could probably go a different direction. That's the thing is if you, especially if Bo Nix works out, next year's draft is wide open of what they're going to be doing in that first round pick. But like I said, it's going to be interesting getting to training camp, seeing what some of these guys, these players that just we haven't seen, such as, like I said, Alex Palchevsky, Frank Crum, if they can show any kind of promise, that's going to go a long ways and feeling comfortable about moving on from Garett Bolles. If the season's going off the wagon halfway through and we get to the trade deadline, I could see Garett Bolles being one of those guys. An injury happens to a playoff team and they come and offer a second round pick just because they view it as a Super Bowl window. And I can see the Broncos going, okay, that's fine for us. We need more draft picks. We need to get a younger team. Garett Bolles is up there in age, wanting a new contract, all those kind of things. So he's such a polarizing player among the fan base, polarizing player in the locker room and, within the front office. Cause like I said, they've been wanting to trade him. They've been kind of wanting to move on from him, but it's also one of those things that he's good enough to stick around.
Right.
Like, you're not going to give him away for free, but nobody's coming with quite an offer because they also see there's some problems with him. So it's just, it's such a weird place to be with Garett Bolles. I think it's kind of like those teams that have a mid-tier quarterback that end up signing him to a really big deal, like a Daniel Jones, those kind of guys, in part because they're like, okay, we know he's not good enough, but yet we don't want to go back to horrible quarterback play where we're just hoping that we can find that next great rookie. And then we stick like the Broncos have been for 8 years trying to figure out the quarterback position. That panic really sets in and teams are willing to overpay. So I'm not saying Garett Bolles is overpaid. I'm just saying that he's kind of in that area where he's just not quite good enough to be getting the really big contract, but he's not bad enough to be gone.
Right. Yep, I agree. All right, Carl, so let's get into kind of tonight's topic with the breakout candidates. So I'll go first with who I deem as a breakout candidate for the Broncos in 2024. And my first guy is going to be Marvin Mims. With the departure of Jerry Jeudy, Mims just has to take that next step. I mean, he's going to assume that Jerry Jeudy position. And last year, we saw the promise. We saw what he can do, the potential. Averaged over 17 yards per catch. No other Bronco was within 2 yards of that mark. And then when Mims was targeted, quarterbacks had 105.9 rating. Obviously, we know about the kick return game, and he has game-breaking speed. So I just want to see more of him, definitely being utilized within the offense. There was that, I always bring up that one game I gave the Commanders where we kind of saw him break out somewhat. And he can definitely be a deep threat, again, with that speed, and definitely kind of being number two. I think he can definitely, but he just has to make sure that he can keep on taking those steps forward. But I would say that that's definitely my candidate as far as a breakout year for sure. Behind Cortland
I'm with you. He's a great choice. If there's been any player talked about this offseason the most of, hey, we didn't use him right, it's Marvin Mims. Where Rashawn Payton is kicking himself when he's looking back at the tape going, we had Mims in for this kind of play. Like, we could have done this. Right. And, we saw those last couple games of the year where they kind of actually got to run the Sean Payton offense when Stidham came in. They were trying to get the ball to Mims on a little bit more regular basis. And now with Jerry Jeudy gone, that's more snaps for him. We'll have to see how he does on the kickoff rules with how things have changed up. But I think he's going to be a weapon for that as well. And so like Michael Davis says, if Mims can hold on to the ball, you might be right. Yeah, the fumbles have to be cleaned up.
Fumbles have to be cleaned up, Michael. You are correct. You are right. That was one knock I had on him for sure in my write-up. But yeah, if he can hold on to the ball, he'd definitely be that guy for sure, Michael. Yep, good point.
Yeah. So, but now I'll go on the other side of the ball. I'll go defense here. And so Shiloh kind of brought up this player saying, Carl, Ron, and Scott, what say you on Bonito? It's one of those, I went back and forth because he kind of emerged this last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a quiet 9-sack season.
Yeah.
And he did that on only 276 pass rush opportunities. So you got to think, he's taken jumps each year. His rookie season, he had a couple plays, but was more of a liability on the field than he was a helper. Last year took a nice little step forward, both as a pass rusher and a run defender. And so I'm excited to see what he can do this year. The Broncos, we talked about it earlier, the defensive line's improved. So I am hoping that means there's going to be some more third and long situations where you can get Nick Bonito into an advantageous situation and allow him to go get after the quarterback. Last year, problem was every third down seemed to be like a 3rd and 3 or less.
Yes.
And so that it really stunk because they're like, oh, Nick Bonito's on the field. Let's just run.
Run it.
We'll still
We didn't stop at the first 2 downs. So what makes you think?
Right. Exactly. And so getting some third and long situations, I'm hoping that the offense can be a little bit more consistent with being able to run the true Sean Payton offense, Bo Nix being out there, taking care of the football, keeping the offense on time. With Russell Wilson, I know it's so crazy. He's, again, one of those players, so polarizing. One stat you can look at, and he's a top 10 quarterback. Another stat you look at, he's a bottom 5 quarterback. And that's just, and really that's how his season went. He had some incredible plays, but he also had some very bonehead moments that cost his team. And so, like I said, having a quarterback that maybe doesn't have quite the high end plays that we saw last year, but can be more consistent play in, play out. And that's what Sean Payton loves to do. I think then, like I said, gives the offense more points or more opportunities, keeps the game close. So the other team has to keep passing. And so then gives hopefully a guy like Nick Bonito more chances because he's the one pass rusher on this team that can be the true game changer. His first step quickness, there's not another pass rusher on this team that has that. They've got some guys that can hold up at the edge, Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning, those kind of guys. They're good, they're strong, but they don't have that first step that you see with Nick Bonito, where this is not me comparing him to Von Miller, but Von Miller had those plays where he could have just that first step where he already won because he was so much faster than the right.
He's so much quick off the line of scrimmage. Yeah, he was quick.
Yeah, and Nick Bonito has those kind of moments, not as consistent as Von Miller. He's not as good all around, but that first step quickness is what he has that kind of resembles somewhat of Von Miller. He's got to add more moves because Von Miller had talent. He had
all the moves in the book. But Miller had everything in the book.
Yeah, he had everything. So again, I'm comparing one part of Von Miller's game here. And so if he can add just another move, that inside spin that Von Miller could do, that would be incredible to see Nick Bonito add that to his game here. Jonah Ellis does that actually pretty well. Like I said, I think he's a guy that I think could be the double digit, get to 12, 13 sacks this year and really change some things for this defense.
Interesting. Yeah, Nick Bonito was one of my, honorable mentions. I would like to see a little bit more, I would say in the run defense, now that you have some guys that can maybe clog up the middle, I don't think his presence is needed as much, but he still can needs to kind of work on that a bit. But yeah, you're right on with his step. Like once he gets off with that step, I think he can definitely kind of be that next elite, or has the potential, I should say, to be an elite pass rusher. But we'll have to see how it shakes out. But yeah, I'm encouraged by what I saw with Benito. And if he does take that next step, and we'll see how Baron Browning does. We'll see how Jonah Ellis performs, and it probably will make somebody else expendable, maybe like a Jonathan Cooper expendable. But we'll see how that shakes out. I still think, Carl, that the edge room is missing just that game changer. Like if they can just get that one guy that opposing offenses have to plan for, I think that'll definitely put this team in a better position. Because again, as I said at the top of the show, the D line looks better. Now I think with a more robust, looks like more stout D line, if they can get the two edge players to at least be consistent, if we can look for some consistency at the edge with the back end, I think this defense can really make some noise in the upcoming season. But yeah, that's a good one. Benito's a good one. All righty, let's see. Before we hop on to our next set of candidates, let's see who else we got coming in. We got Phil McLaughlin coming in the chat. Thank you, Phil, for popping back in. Says, well, guys, we have a lot of possible talent in the wide receiver room. So who are the 4 starters? Also, same with running backs. Who are the 3 starters, and who do we have as fullbacks? So I would say starters for receiver. Cortland Sutton, hopefully he remains, but Cortland Sutton. Marvin Mims. Josh Reynolds and Troy Franklin.
In this scenario, does Tim Patrick make the team for you?
That's where I go. That's where I'm going. Because I see them actually having 6 on the roster.
Yeah.
And with that, Tim Patrick kind of is the 2 remaining there. But as far as, yeah, I don't know what's, it just depends on how he comes back from that injury. I think that's still, they might try to easily, slowly kind of fold him back. But I would say starting week 1 or that first quarter of the season, Carl, I would go with the 4 that I just listed.
Yeah, no, it's a good choice. I've gone back and forth. Troy Franklin or Tim Patrick being that 4th guy. Now Patrick, obviously he's been in the system, even though he was injured. He's been a veteran, so he knows how this thing works a little bit. I think he could also help on special teams a little bit more than Troy Franklin. From what I understand, teams are thinking they're going to have to be a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. So they're going to keep some of their bigger receivers compared to some of these speed fast guys that can't really help as a blocking opportunity. So like I said, I think Tim Patrick could find himself getting more snaps because of that compared to Troy Franklin this year. The next year, when Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and maybe even Josh Reynolds are gone, then Troy Franklin steps up into that starter role and getting more and more snaps because he is a talent. I don't want to take that away from him. He's going to have some packages designed for him because you don't keep that kind of size speed combination off the field the entire season. And you always have a few injuries here and there. So he's going to get some opportunities. But I think to start the season, I would go Sutton, Reynolds, Mims, and Patrick. Franklin will be there, and he might get some snaps during the game. We'll see. And then 6th receiver. Oh man, that's a tough one. I'll go little Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah,
because he, other than Sutton, he might have been our next most consistent receiver.
Consistent, yes, agree.
He was trusted as a blocker. He's got that size. He made some nice plays catching the football. I think he's a hard worker. Peyton seems to trust him more than a lot of those other backup guys. So if I was saying the Broncos are keeping 6, that's who I'd be. Running backs, again, this is going to be a tough one because I don't know how
This
many they're
is
going to
tough.
keep this year. I'll go
Yeah, I don't
Javonte.
either.
I'll go Javonte, Estime, McLaughlin.
Watson.
Yeah, I'll say Watson, and then Michael Burton will be the fullback.
With fullback, yeah.
Yeah, Peyton does like having a fullback on the team. So I think he definitely makes the roster, and he was good last year. So I think P. Ryan's going to be the one guy that's left out in this.
Yeah, that's. See, Dylan and I were talking about P. Ryan just because I don't know. It's just I think that's just kind of how it shakes out. I mean, as good as P. Ryan was last year, kind of being that utility. I think given what Peyton's trying to build, kind of that fierce out running game, you saw P. Ryan last year be more, just kind of dink and dunk passes, right? He was there for that. And I just think with Estime and I think Watson is way more versatile. I think Peyton could definitely do a lot with Watson. And Javonte, I see those being the starters for sure. McLaughlin probably can come in every now and again, kind of give you some lightning to the thunder. But yeah, I'm right there with you. It's probably just going to be those four with P. Ryan looking out.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess that sets up for me my next candidate, which would be McLaughlin.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, last year he was kind of up and down on how many snaps they would give him. And obviously him being a rookie, him not being the greatest as a blocker kept him off the field some. I think he only had like 85 snaps last year total. But when he was in and when he got his opportunities, he took big time advantage of them. Of those 85 snaps, he had 12 of them go for 10 plus yards. So that's a pretty good little number compared to, especially in today's NFL where it's, hey, keep everything in front of you, go make a tackle, and don't let the big play happen. He was one of those guys that actually made some people miss. I love his story, showing up to training camp, pretty much living out of his car and just working his tail off, being one of the first people in the building. I think Sean Payton even talked about it. He said, yeah, there's times where McLaughlin has already gone through a workout and is in the middle of stretching before other players start showing up to the building. Like he's that committed to being great in the NFL. Now there's always going to be, hey, sometimes your talent can only get you so far, or your work ethic can only get you so far because talent still matters in this league. There's just going to be those guys who are just so talented. He's not going to be a Christian McCaffrey because he's got work ethic on top of talent. But I think McLaughlin, especially in the pass game this year, where you've got a quarterback that can really do more timing things with him, I think you're going to see him really thrive in that kind of role. Now, Dan Wilkett brings up, do you trust McLaughlin as a pass blocker? No, I don't.
No.
But when he's in, I'm not asking him to do that. Now, here's the difference. I know a lot of people got after me because I was not a huge Philip Lindsay fan back in the day. But the big thing with Philip Lindsay was he was so one-dimensional. When he was in the game, you knew they were running.
Same with McLaughlin.
and McLaughlin, at least he can catch passes.
Yeah.
Like he can actually go out for a pass. He can go make a play. And so having that ability where you can at least mix it up a little bit. Now, they didn't do that much last year, but when he did get his opportunities in the pass game, he did look good. I think they're going to hopefully trust him a little bit more in that. And there again, yes, teams are going to know, hey, when McLaughlin's in, we're not going to trust him to be the pass. Like, he's not going to be a pass blocker. Like he's going to go out for a route. We know that. And so he's got to work on that. And if he can improve in that area and build some trust, he doesn't have to be great at it, but if he can at least be competent and build up some trust, then he can get a lot more snaps this season.
Yeah, I agree with you, McLaughlin. That's everyone's knock, just kind of working on his overall game. When he's in there for a snap, I mean, when he touches the ball, I mean, the guy's explosive. I mean, the guy can definitely catch and run with the quickness. It's just a matter of being committed to working on. And then you mentioned if he's committed, can he pass protect? Again, I think that's part of what McLaughlin mentioned, that he needs to work on his overall game, and that does include, you know, being there as a blocker and to pass protect at times. So if he can, clean that up and improve that, I mean, I think he can definitely make it this week. That's a good choice, Carl, for sure. And I want to get back. Speaking of Dan, looks like let's kind of see some comments here. Dan, and again, thank you, Dan Wilkie, for coming in with all of your comments and perspective. We appreciate it. Troy Franklin will not be a starter this year, no way. And then he's in the practice squad, which I don't see Troy Franklin being on the practice squad. Now I do agree with this here, as we alluded to earlier. Definitely needs to learn how to not drop the ball for sure, because I know that was a little bit of an issue. But definitely, if he can clean that up, I just think, how can he not be in the field? Now, again, I think Carl and I share, maybe disagree slightly on how we see Troy Franklin. And we kind of go back and forth where Tim Patrick, I can definitely see starting too, but I just think, Troy Franklin may have a little bit more of a role to, just because of that chemistry with Bo Nix, trying to kind of maintain that a bit. But yeah, I can definitely see, Tim Patrick easily kind of being. But yeah, Dan, I just kind of wanted to address some of the comments you made here. But thank you again for coming in.
Yeah, I would say my bigger issue with Troy Franklin, he had a couple drops, but I think some of that was more him not always understanding what he was supposed to be doing on certain plays.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a couple plays where it was Oregon was running up against a zone defense, and Bo Nix would miss him, and it would look like, oh man, that was a really bad pass. No, he was throwing to a window where he knew, hey, this is the spot to go in the zone defense, and Troy Franklin kept running further than he should have. Like he ran into the defender rather than running to the spot. So that's where with Troy Franklin, he's got to understand the nuances of the game a little bit better. And then even there, I think that improves his hands, where he's not having to think as much like, what should I be doing? Am I supposed to be here? Am I supposed to be there? Once you just become natural of this is where I'm supposed to be. And there's certain receivers that have always just been great at those kind of things, that have made a career out of just understanding the little nuances of the game. Speed is great, but knowing how to use your speed, how to set up defenders, being able to change gears throughout your route. Hey, maybe I'm only in second gear to start off the route, and then as I cut, I jump into fourth gear where I'm setting that guy up thinking, hey, this guy's not going full speed. Those kind of little details are what separate the average from the good, or the good from the great when it comes to the NFL. And Troy Franklin, he's got all the talent in the world. So don't get me wrong. I mean, this guy could become something with that speed, that size. Needs to add a little weight. He is definitely skinny.
Yeah, he is. He is.
But otherwise, he could become something good here in the NFL. So that's why I have Tim Patrick ahead of him right now, is just because I think he needs more time. And, it might not be this year that we really get to see much of Troy Franklin. They'll have a couple plays every game designed to try to get the ball for Troy Franklin. Same with Marvin Mims. But for the most part, I think he's going to be using this as a developmental year. Sophomore year is where he's really going to break out.
Yep. I agree. Good home there. Thank you, Dan. Again, thank you, Dan, for coming in. Let's see. My next guy to break out, and we saw a little bit near the end of last year, but I think given how this D line was restructured, we're going to see more of a breakout. Zach Allen. Zach Allen is set to break out this year. With the 17 games last year, he had 5 sacks, 60 total tackles, 8 tackles for losses, 24 QB hits. And now with the addition of a Malcolm Roach and a John Franklin Myers, which is one of my favorite pickups in the offseason, I expect a big year for Zach Allen. He can just, help with that interior pass rush. And I think again, with the help of those other guys surrounding him, I do expect even more tackles and probably even more sacks as well from the interior. So I think he's gonna break out, Carl. I really do think. And again, we saw some of that last year. I think he's what 27 now, so still relatively young there, but I just hope he really turns the corner.
Yeah, he's going right into his prime right now. Like I said, just getting close to turning 27. I think he'll be 27 right before the season starts.
Yeah.
And you're right, having a legit player next to him and John Franklin Myers that can get after the quarterback, and teams have to figure out how are we going to block these two guys in the interior, opens up some opportunities for him. And then having a little bit more depth this year, Zach Allen, I think part of his problem last year, he really kind of struggled. He was very up and down as the season went on. I think his last really good game was against the Chargers at LA. The last few games, he had some struggles. He's a little more consistent early in the season, but he had 913 snaps last season. It's like 200 more snaps than he's ever had in a season. And so I think giving him a little bit more break, having a Malcolm Roach to back him up, hopefully Ruzarike is back. That could be another guy that could really kind of bring in some extra oomph to that defensive line if he can actually return and be healthy and not get himself in trouble. But yeah, having a couple extra guys back there that can actually come in and, DJ Jones being back as well, I think he could have a really nice bounce back season.
Mm-hmm.
He's broken out when he was with the 49ers, kind of had a down year this last year. It was pretty good his first year with Denver. I think he could be the bounce back candidate for the Broncos this season. All those guys being able to just kind of rotate in will be huge if they can all stay healthy for sure. So I'm interested to see. He was actually on my list here. I had him up here on my screen for an option. John Franklin Myers is another one that I think could really turn this into, just because those two working off each other and him getting more of a starting opportunity where with the Jets, he was kind of more of a part of the rotation. Here in Denver, he has an opportunity to be the star.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know PFF just put out their rankings for the defensive lines, and the Jets were number 1. Broncos were number 32 or 31. Sorry, 31. There was one team worse than us. And part of it that they said was John Franklin Myers. He was traded from the Jets. It just shows the difference of here's the Jets number 1. And they were able to trade away a guy like this because they have so much talent. And here he is coming to the Broncos, maybe being their top guy. And so, yeah, I think he's going to have more opportunities. Zach Allen might have less snaps. John Franklin might have more snaps. And so giving him more opportunities to actually get after the quarterback, I really do think he could have a nice bounce back or really breakout season where he becomes more well-known because, like I said, he was kind of playing second fiddle there with the Jets. They've actually got some real talent on that defensive line, and he was never one of those guys listed when they were talking about the Jets very often. And so here in Denver, I think he could maybe be one of those 8 or 9 sack kind of guys. And we got Dan Wilkett coming in saying John Franklin Myers is going to feast. Can't wait to see him in a Denver Broncos uniform. JFM is going to kill it this year. Yeah, you can hear it in his voice. Like he's just excited. He's finally getting that opportunity to be that starter. Yeah, he is definitely ready.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Dan. Like hearing him interviews, he is just ready to work with everyone in Denver. He's ready to get to work with his D line, and I think we all are waiting to see him in a Broncos uniform, just like you. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting to watch him and just watch those game-breaking, game-changing plays and him with Malcolm Roach and Zach Allen. I just, like I said, I'm so encouraged by what the Broncos have done to address the D-line. So, all right. Let's see who else we have. We got Mike Edel coming in with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Mike. So, what is your guys' opinion of who is going to end up playing center? Great show. Go Broncos. This is so. I think this question was asked to me and Dylan at one point, and I think we both said Alex Forsythe. And the reason why I went with that is just because, honestly, I'm going by what they said after the season last year, Carl, where everyone's high on Forsythe. Both Peyton said that they can see him as a quality center. And they made that pick for a reason. Now I'm also going with it just because there's some familiarity there with Knicks. But I see it as Alex Forsythe. I wouldn't be surprised, Mike. If Sam Mustipher maybe ends up taking that too, but I think going into the season now, I'm going to go with Forsythe.
See, I'm going to go a completely different way here. I'm going to go Luke Wattenberg.
Oh, you want Wattenberg? Okay.
I am. So he had a couple games last year where he came in, and the Broncos offensive line was very healthy most of last season, but he was that next guy off the bench.
Okay.
And Wattenberg, his rookie season, horrible when he had to play. Like he just looked completely overmatched. And I was going, oh my gosh, this is another one of those really bad picks. And he's another guy that just shows sometimes those offensive linemen, especially, it just takes a year. Like I think we got kind of spoiled with guys like Ryan Clady who came in and were like all pro level day one.
Plug and play.
Yeah. And Wattenberg wasn't that guy. He needed a year or two to kind of develop. He's doing much better, I think, with Sean Payton and this coaching. He's taken well to it. I do think that he stands a really good chance of being the starter. Like I said, he was that next guy trusted last season. And so I think this will be another opportunity for him. I think going into training camp, if I had to guess, I would say that he gets first snaps, first opportunities when it comes to who goes with the number ones. Not saying that Forsythe won't get an opportunity by any means, because he will. I think they like him. And like I said, he has that connection with Bo. There's a lot of those kind of things. But to me, Wattenberg is my guy that I think will end up winning it.
Okay. Howie freaking day. Hashtag Bo knows. Hashtag Buckham. Thank you, Howie, for coming in. We appreciate it. And then Mike Edel coming in with another super chat. Were any of them wrestlers? Thank you, Mike, for coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. You see a lot of the top offensive linemen in football, they have that wrestling background from the high school, college days.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. That is a really good question. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Because like I said, it kind of fits well. Especially that center position.
Yes.
Just being that smart guy, knowing what to do with your hands, knowing how to work leverage, all those kind of things shows up when in wrestling as well. And so I like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. They're probably were state champions if they did wrestle, just because they're those natural athletes, especially those big boys. We had my hometown. Just I know we're going off on a tangent, but since we're talking about wrestling, they've won the last 4 state championships, and their top guy for the heavyweight. Every year he had to lose like 40 pounds to get down to heavyweight weight. Because football, like he would really get bulked up because he played center and he just kind of stood there and made a wall. And then he wrestled that kind of same way. Like he just kind of stand there and hold the guy, just hope that the guy at some point would make a wrong move. And all of a sudden he just kind of fall on top of the guy. And it was kind of fun to watch, actually. It's a different style of wrestling. The heavyweights, it's some of my favorite type of wrestling. I don't know why. I just, the younger, the smaller weights, they got a lot more technique to it. The big guys, it's just all about leverage and weight.
And weight. Yeah. Definitely. All right, guys, we are approaching 50 minutes here. So I guess we'll get into our last breakout candidate, and then we can probably call it a night. So, Carl, who you got for your last candidate?
Well, I guess I will go Jonas Griffith.
He was on my list. Well, he was a memorable. He was an honorable mention. He was an honorable mention.
Okay. You look at that kind of size that he has, 6'4", 6'5", somewhere in there, 250 pounds. It's a little bit different compared to most linebackers in the NFL today. But having that kind of size in the middle allows you he can cover a lot of space without hardly having to move. And then he's got some athleticism on top of that. His biggest thing in the NFL so far has been he just can't stay healthy. And, there's been times where he was right on that edge of possibly going to be a starter. I think like 2 years ago before they brought in Alex Singleton, Jonas Griffith was supposed to be that guy that came in and became a starter for him. And then he got hurt. And so like I said, if he can stay healthy, I really think he could surprise some people out there with how good of a football player he really is.
Yeah, I can definitely see him coming in next to Alex Singleton and doing well. I mean, the guy is good, but I think you're right. The biggest knock, he can't stay healthy. But I think this season for sure, if he stays healthy, he's definitely going to have a shot. I see a big season for him for sure. So just like Dan coming in here, Jonas is going to surprise everyone. Yes, Jonas will 100% bring it, and you're right on, Dan. I think the guy is very good in middle field. He can tackle. I do see a big season for him if he can stay healthy. Emphasis on that last part for sure. So that's a good one, Carl. Thank you. My next, and hopefully he'll even get this opportunity. Of course, this is if he gets this opportunity. Riley Moss. And I'm hoping he can get his shot, Carl. Like it can only go up as far as that number 2 cornerback spot. I'm really hoping the guy can get on the field. I mean, it's already a low bar for him. But if he can come in, again, we saw what he did when he was in college. I mean, there were 11 interceptions, 26 pass breakups in college. And the Broncos can definitely use that production at the number 2 corner position. And again, I know it may take him a while to, of course, get his bearings and such, right? Because, he hasn't really played much, not at all. But, if he can just come in and do at least half of that. Obviously, we know PS2 is your guy, but coming in and giving us that production with Jaquan McMillian as well, I can see him emerging. Now, as far as breakout, maybe not quite there yet, but if he can emerge based on at least half of that production, I do see him somewhat kind of starting to break out. But I think I can speak for a lot of people to say that we just want a chance. We just want to have the Broncos have a chance on Riley Moss. So again, that's kind of more of my wish of him coming in and taking over that CB2 position, and if he does, who knows? The sky's the limit.
Yeah, obviously the Broncos invested a lot in him. It wasn't just a 3rd round pick; they traded an extra 3rd round pick to secure him.
Yeah.
So in reality, it's pretty much they gave up a 2nd round pick for this guy, and you expect 2nd round picks to be starters pretty early in their career. So, and especially when you have that kind of hole at the number 2 cornerback spot right now. I mean, you got Levi Wallace, who's okay. I mean, I wouldn't put him as a top half of the league starter at cornerback.
Right.
He's the, if you have to hit the emergency button, he's that guy.
You should go to him. Mm-hmm.
But you're hoping either Mathis or Riley Moss can actually emerge and be a competent starter across from Patrick Surtain. And I would give the nod to Riley Moss. I think he's a really good fit with what I've seen from VJ in the past of what he likes from cornerbacks. Part of the problem with Mathis last year was they played him in this off man coverage where he was like 10 to 12 yards off. And teams were like, well, this is easy. Let's just throw a quick pass out there, and then he's got to make a tackle. And we can just do this all game because he keeps staying back there. And Mathis, his game is press coverage. Like that's what he's really good at. He's got the ability to turn and run, get aggressive. And so they were using him completely wrong, and then they destroyed all of his confidence. Where Riley Moss, what he did there in Iowa was he played a lot of off-zone man coverage, and his click and close speed, you talked about with the knockdowns, the interceptions, like he's a playmaker that way. He likes to have his head turned towards the quarterback so he can see what's going on, be smart on the field. And so I think he's a better fit. He's another one, kind of like Mathis, kind of like Jonas Griffith. He's got to stay healthy. He was injured for most of his rookie season, so missed a lot of time there. And then he had like 2 or 3 practices this offseason and then was re-injured. And when he was in there, I heard a lot of people talking about him going, man, he looked really good. He looked really competent. But then he missed the next like 3 or 4 practices. And I get it. Like I'd rather be cautious right now than, put a player out there and hurt him even worse.
Yeah.
But still, it's concerning when he can only practice a couple times before he's already re-injured with something else. I want to see if he can actually stay healthy, become a true competent number 2, and live up to why the Broncos were willing to trade up so much for him.
Yeah. Again, that's all we can hope for is you can just stay healthy and the Broncos will give him a chance. Who knows? Because you're spot on as far as his style of play. I mean, it fits well, but he has to stay healthy to do it. And then Dan Wilkett coming in again, Levi Wallace or Riley Moss. I would say Riley Moss. I mean, I think I picked Wallace just because he's, I guess, the more experienced, but it doesn't mean that he's that great or he fits the best. Right, I'm only going by experience and the veteran presence. But if I have to choose which one, I would want and seeing it being the best fit for the Broncos for that cornerback 2 position, it's going to be Riley Moss.
Yeah, I would say as a Bronco fan, you better be hoping it's Riley Moss. We know what Levi Wallace is. Like I said, he's a veteran that if you have to play him, you better hope you have a lot more talent on the defense to make up for his inefficiencies. Like he's slow. He's smart on the field. He's a decent tackler, but he's slow. Like he can get burned over the top. So that's why you need other talent around him. And I don't think the Broncos have the talent on defense to make up for the inefficiencies of Levi Wallace. Where if Riley Moss emerges and becomes a true competent starter for you, it allows you to do a lot more with some of the other players. Your safeties don't have to always be helping over the top every single play. You can mix some things up. And I see a few people, what is concerning is the mere fact that VJ does not know how to utilize the players he has. I will say this in his defense. Like I think VJ is a middle tier defensive coordinator. But last year, part of the problem was he was told to try to mix his system with the Vic Fangio system. And I'm sorry that doesn't work. Think about 2015 with Peyton Manning and Kubiak. And Kubiak was told to try to blend your system with Peyton Manning and what he likes to do. And so they did this like pistol system because Peyton doesn't like to be under center all the time, especially later in his career. He always wanted to be in shotgun. And it did not look good. Nobody looked comfortable. And as the season progressed, like they kind of scrapped it a little bit. And that's what we saw last year. VJ for the first 5-6 games tried to run the Vic Fangio system, but he didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And finally, they were just like, okay, we're keeping you around, live or die with your system. And while the defense didn't become top 10, they at least became competent. They weren't the worst defense in football after the first about 5-6 weeks of the season.
Yeah, with those takeaways and all, right? You saw that change near the middle of the season where the takeaways became impressive. The guys are a little bit scrappier because that first half So well, I say the first quarter of the season, that defense looked lost. There were so many breaks down coverages. It was just it was horrible, Carl. This is so bad. But yeah, I think I think now with they had that resurgence, if you will, in the middle of last season, and I think now a second season with BJ with the players, you'll probably see they shouldn't start off badly like they did last year. But again, we'll see how it shakes out. But I think with Riley Moss, I just want to see him play opposite PS2. I think you just have to see what the guy has. I mean, again, you just have to see what he's about. Again, you like you said, you drafted him high. You moved to actually get him, and so play him. But yeah, he's got to stay on the field. But we'll see how it shakes out. All right, guys, we are right at an hour, so we are going to call it a night. But before we get out of here, we just want to say thank you. And as Dan Wolfett says here, great show to the both of you. Go Denver Broncos, DB for life, Denver Broncos country. Thank you very much, Dan, for coming with that. We appreciate it. And we appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share our channel. And then also follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. My partner there at Carl Dumler MHH, and I am at Ron White NFL. And a reminder for you guys, make sure you come out to Empower Field at Mile High on September 15th. It will be the meet and greet, and you will see. I'll be there. Carl, you're going to be there as well.
I have a wedding, so I don't think I will.
Okay, so he won't be there. But you'll see a lot of us there. So yeah, please come and join us. And, we're going to talk Broncos football and enjoy some highlights of the game as well. Before we get out of here, Carl, do you have any parting words for Denver Broncos country?
No, I think the big thing that's going to make such a big difference this year, one, coaching staff's back.
Mm-hmm.
I think the additions that they have made have been really strong. Jim Leonard. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that they've made, but especially him. I think he's going to be a great addition for this defense. I think that's going to pay off more than people realize. Good coaching doesn't mean that you're going to have a great team, but bad coaching can really ruin a great roster. And so, like I said, I think with Sean Payton in this system, the defense looking like they got some really good players there. I like what the offensive line's looking like. I think this team could surprise a few people, maybe not playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be as PFF has been kind of going over and over again that they're the worst roster in football. I don't think they're going to be that. That's why you're going to see some of these breakout candidates actually break out this year.
And speaking of coaching, David Shaw too.
That's right. Yeah, that was the one I couldn't come up with off the top of my head there.
Yeah,
he is a huge addition. Yes. NFL teams have been trying to get that guy for years to come to the NFL. So for him to come to the Broncos, it means he believes in what they're doing here. He talked about it. Like, I'm not gonna go anywhere unless I feel comfortable with it, and I feel like it's a good situation. So the fact that he picked the Broncos should be a good sign to all of us.
Yes, most definitely. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for tuning in. Have a great week ahead, and I will be back next Saturday. You'll see Carl on Tuesday. I'll be back next Saturday with Dylan, and we will talk to you all next week. Go Broncos.